One of the things that's been on my mind is the trailer for this new Harriet Tubman movie called Harriet. You know, if I am, correct me in the comments section below. It's playing her in the movie, and a lot of people on Twitter are in an uproar about it because they feel like an American descendant of chattel slavery, an African American or ADOS, should portray Harriet Tubman and not a person from the United Kingdom. Now, this is way different from like Ariel and the Little Mermaid and stuff because, uh, other controversies like this because Harriet Tubman is a real person from real history and she really matters to a great number of people and she existed and she's an important figure. She's not somebody from a fictional universe like Hermione from Harry Potter or Ariel from Little Mermaid or a stormtrooper from Star Wars. She's somebody real. She's she affected a lot of people's lives and she impacted American history a great deal. Now, I agree with these people. I think that um, a person of American descent, African American descent, should play Harriet Tubman. I don't know why they always get black British actors like Daniel Kaluuya to play African American parts or Idris Elba. Well, I know Idris Elba. He's a sex symbol to a lot of women. But why did they get them to play in um, these non uh, uh, um, fictional roles, these important roles that matter, these people from history, even in Selma, you know, the guy that played Martin Luther King Jr. was a person, a black British person, not an African American. And maybe the British people are just better actors or they're taken more seriously. I know that's the case in a lot of um, white movies. If somebody has a British accent, you assume that they're more intelligent or more worldly than a person with an American accent. And that's just a common assumption that many Americans have. But in something like this, this is not like I said, it's not like a James Bond thing or a thing like Ariel, a fake outrage. This is a real outrage because this is people's real history. You know, you wouldn't have a Holocaust movie starring somebody important from the Holocaust that fought against Germany, Schindler's List. You wouldn't have uh, a Muslim play that. Or you wouldn't have a Sephardic Jew play that. You make sure there was somebody of Ashkenazic or Jew or European Jewish descent. Just because saying, "Oh well, they're both Jewish," doesn't matter. Well, it actually it does. Just because Cynthia Erivo is black and Harriet Tubman is black, they're different ethnicities, and black people in Britain had a different experience than black people in America. Yes, most black people in Britain are descendants of slaves whose families immigrated to Britain from the West Indies. But in Cynthia Erivo's case, I don't I don't think that's the case. I'm not sure. I'm not gonna make a statement on that. I think she might be Nigerian or something. And in that case, then they're right to be outraged because African immigrants to the United States and to other Western countries, they have different experiences than American descendants of chattel slavery. You can't just conflate everybody in the same bowl just because they're all quote unquote black or quote unquote people of color. This is complete, utter the definition of racism, guys. You know, when you look up racism in the dictionary, judging somebody by the color of their skin and casting them in a part just because they happen to be of the same skin tone or race, quote unquote, is what racism is, guys. You know what I mean? Like, this is why this is so messed up. People say, "Oh, what's the big deal?" What's the big deal? We're dealing with Harriet Tubman. Other than Frederick Douglass, she's the biggest, largest, most important figure in the abolitionist movement in history ever. She's about to be put on a $20 bill. I mean, how can you not see that this is freaking wrong? This is racist by these Hollywood producers. You know what I mean? Like, come on, wake up. You know, just because you're uh, a black person from another country like Britain or Nigeria or whatever, doesn't mean that your ancestors had the same experiences as people from the United States. There are plenty of people in Hollywood that are African American descent, descendants of American chattel slaves, whose families came to the North from the South or to California from the South, who could portray Harriet Tubman. You don't need this lady from Britain to portray Harriet Tubman. So the outrage is understandable. You know, stop looking at the surface level of a person. Stop saying, well, oh, well, he must understand everything about Hispanic people because he's Guatemalan when the border crisis situation involves mostly Mexicans. Or they must understand what this guy's going through because he's a Pakistani Muslim and this guy is a Somali Muslim or a, 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 um, a Muslim from Uzbekistan. No, just because they happen to share quote unquote the same ethnicity or the same skin tone, race, whatever have you, doesn't mean they share the same experiences. There are differences in experiences historically among people of the same race. You know, don't you guys act like you're freaking stupid. You know what I mean? People say, oh, well, they freak out over the slightest things. And one of the videos that I'm going to do probably tomorrow or later on today, if I get my thoughts together, is about J Lo. And a couple of months ago, J Lo had an experience where she did a performance at the Grammys of Motown, and people didn't like that because they said, "Well, she's a Hispanic artist. What does she know about Motown?" And I understood where they're coming from, even though, uh, um, I'm not a fan of J Lo. I don't like J Lo, and I love Motown's music. I understood where they were coming from because Motown's music plays an important um, is an important part of African American popular culture, just as Harriet Tubman is an important part of African American culture. Like, for example, when they made a movie about Frida Kahlo, would it have been okay for them to cast um, a Cuban in the role of Frida Kahlo? No, because Frida Kahlo was a person of Mexican descent and a part of Mexican history. And let's be frank about this, was a whole lot less important to Mexican people than Harriet Tubman was to African Americans. So, I get it. I get where these people are coming from. I get it. I get it entirely. You know, it makes sense. The outrage makes sense. So you can't just throw it in the bowl, so to speak, that you throw people's outrage about fictional characters like James Bond or The Little Mermaid or even Nina Simone. Nina Simone was an important part of the Black Power movement in terms of the arts, but Harriet Tubman. I mean, really, like imagine if a British person played George Washington. You know, imagine a Japanese person playing Mao Zedong in a movie. Crazy, crazy to think. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna boycott the movie because I love history. I'm gonna probably watch the movie anyway. Go to see it. The trailer looks pretty good. It looks good from a cinematic perspective. But in terms of this controversy, I understand it, guys. I understand it completely. It makes sense because by casting someone who's not American and whose ancestors didn't suffer those atrocities, being British, um, I get where they're coming from. Why should other people, outsiders, come in to reap off Black American culture, Black American history, especially Harriet Tubman? I mean, we're not just talking about Tupac. Not that to minimize Tupac's impact on society. Tupac had a tremendous impact on society. I love Tupac, but very few people, other than like Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Frederick Douglass, you know, loom as large in Black American consciousness and in American consciousness as a whole as Harriet Tubman. You know, you might be completely ignorant of pre-Civil War history in the United States, antebellum history in the United States, but you know who Harriet Tubman is. You know, you know who she is. You know the Underground Railroad. You know about all that stuff. Freedom, Moses, female. They portrayed her as the female Moses because she was freeing all these slaves. You know all about that. Even if you don't know anything about Harriet Tubman as a person, her history, or anything. You know the surface stuff. She's one of the major figures in American history, and to have somebody who's not even American portray her is crazy, guys. You know what I mean? Like crazy, crazy, crazy to think. You know what I mean? Like it's like having somebody who's not American play John F. Kennedy or George Washington or Abraham Lincoln. You know, there are certain people in history who are so important, so mean so much to the national consciousness of the people that it has to be somebody of that nationality. Because if it isn't, um, it's wrong. You know what I mean? Like, understand this is different because you see videos on my channel, like I said, The Little Mermaid, Star Wars, other insignificant speculative fiction or fantasy movies that it really doesn't matter. But this is history, guys. This is something that really happened. This is something that impact people's lives and culture. This is different. Peace.